right, and welcome to the Courtenay Turner podcast. I'm your host, Courtenay, and I'm super passionate about moving and thinking. On this show, we are going to dive into all things health, fitness, personal development, lifestyle, and political sociocultural. I've always been fascinated by people, and I love learning from the experiences and stories of others. This has been a treat for me, and I hope this is enjoyable and useful. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or any way that I can make this a better experience for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Hello, welcome to the Courtenay Turner podcast. I am here today with Aaron Baker, who is a research scientist and a registered dietitian. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good.
So tell me a little bit about what you do and how you got into this whole field.
Oh boy. Okay. So as of right now, I am a long-term care dietitian. However, I'm looking to transition out of that. And the reason why is because the medical system that we're in right now is called the allopathic medical system. And out of the 7 different types of medicine that there is, that is the only system that your insurance will pay for, right? In my opinion, out of the 7 that there is, it is the worst of the worst, because it's what you call reductionism. Okay. And I myself, I run my own website. I do counsel on the side. Mainly, I want to focus on holism, which is not holistic with an H. This is holism with a W. Okay. And the difference is, with allopathic medicine is a atheist medicine. Okay, it doesn't believe in a creator. Its philosophy is you're this genetic bag of goo that by circumstance and chance happen to come together to form what we call a human being. And your body breaks down over time and things start failing, and the only way to stop your eventual demise or delay your eventual demise is to take big pharma's medications. And their medications work in a series of reductionism. Okay. And what reductionism means is they stop a side effect by stopping a process in the body. They reduce something in the body almost every time, right? So a perfect example that I like to cite is, do you remember the old commercials with Sally Fields, Boniva?
Yeah.
Right. So you don't see those commercials anymore because that was what, 20 years ago when that happened.
Oh yeah.
So
wow,
what?
I feel really old. Thanks.
I may be wrong on that. It may be less than that, but I remember watching
You're probably
it
right.
many years ago. Yeah. And,
yeah.
I'm not exactly young either, but so the reason why you don't see the commercials for Boniva anymore is they got sued. And they got sued for long bone fractures. And the reason why is because there's 2 processes in your body, okay? And they're called osteoclasts and osteoblasts, okay?
Right. Yep.
So what happens is your body is going through a process of breaking down old bone and creating new bone all the time. This is happening, all the time. Right.
Yeah.
So the osteoclasts are what come around and they break down, they look for old bone in the body, they tear it down, and then the osteoblasts come through and they create new bone. Right. So what Big Pharma did with Boniva is they stopped you from making osteoclasts. Okay. So then the osteoblast had no job to do. So it shuts that whole system down. Correct. So what you would do is you would go, and this kind of ties into where I want to go with supplements as well, vitamins and minerals, because Big Pharma loves to make you think that vitamins and minerals don't work, right?
Right.
So what they do is you go to the doctor and you get your DEXA scan. Oh, absolutely. And really that's the true medicine, right? So you go to the doctor, he does a DEXA scan on you, he looks at your bones, he sees your bones are soft and spongy. So he goes, oh, well, let's try some calcium first. So he sends you to the store. You go to the store and you see different calciums on the shelf, and then most people will go, oh, hey, I'll take the calcium carbonate because it's $8 a bottle, right?
Right.
What calcium carbonate is it's a dead mineral. Okay, there's organic minerals and inorganic minerals. Now, an organic mineral is a live mineral. It's alive. It has a carbon attached to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
An unlive mineral doesn't. Calcium carbonate basically is limestone that's pounded into dust. All right. So you only absorb about 10% of that. So you get the doctor says, I want you to take 2,000 milligrams of calcium carbonate, thinking that you're getting 2,000 milligrams of calcium. But what you're really getting is 60% carbonate, 40% calcium.
Right.
So when you're doing 2,000 milligrams, you're only really getting about 800 milligrams of calcium, but it's inorganic and your body only will absorb 10% of that. So now you're looking at 80, right? Do you think that's going to do anything for you? No. So you do that for a couple months. You go back, the doctor looks at you again and he goes, well, it doesn't seem like the calcium works. So we're going to go ahead and put you on Boniva. So he puts you on Boniva, that process stops. So you no longer break down. And then old bone just continues to pile up, pile up, pile up, pile up. You go back, you get another scan. The doctor looks at your bones and he doesn't see the soft spongy anymore. And he goes, oh, it's working. Keep doing what you're doing. Then one day you're walking down the street, you step off a curb and your femur bone snaps like dried tinder.
Right.
And that's what was happening with Fosamax. With Boniva. So they sued, a bunch of people sued and they got pulled from the market. So then comes the birth of Fosamax. And Fosamax is the one they use today.
Mm-hmm.
Same pill, same process, except now it's a smaller dose and you get it less, in an expanded amount of time. So then your long bone fracture happens in 10 years. And then they go, oh, well, that's just a disease process. So that's the big pharma scam. And they're very, very good at discrediting vitamins and minerals. And one of the big, a perfect example for you is D2. Okay. D2 is a drug. Okay. So, because Big Pharma is not allowed to patent vitamins and minerals because those are natural things, right? So, what they do is they'll take vitamin D or D3 or whatever, and they'll genetically or chemically modify it slightly.
If they modify it 30%, then they can put a patent in it.
Absolutely. And that's what D2 is. And they call it ergocalciferol. Okay. Ergocalciferol is junk. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
I've seen people, have these vitamin D issues. They put them on D2. Eventually D2 will be pulled from the market because then once they've discredited vitamin D as helping you, then they don't need that drug anymore. Right. So that's kind of how it works. There's a real good documentary out there. I don't know if you've ever heard of G. Edward Griffin.
What? Who?
G. Edward Griffin.
No.
He is a great author. He's done some really, really good books. He did some books on communism.
Okay.
He did some books on health. And this was, the 30s, 40s, and 50s. This guy was doing this stuff.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In the 80s, he did a really good documentary called A World Without Cancer. And you can probably still find that. And have you seen that before?
No.
Great.
Sounds amazing.
Oh, it's a great documentary. And it's basically about Laetrile. Okay. Laetrile was a drug that was created by a vitamin or a mineral called or a vitamin called C17. Okay. It's within B17. It's within the class of B drugs, right? B17 is
B or E?
B.
B like boy, beta.
Right. Yeah. B17, I mean, yes, we know about B1, B2, B3, B12, all the different Bs, but there's a whole list of other B vitamins that you don't hear much about because they don't understand the effects that they have, or they do understand the effects and don't want you to have that. Vitamin B17 was actually destroying cancer in people. and you can actually get it naturally from the environment. One of the highest sources that you can get it from are apple seeds and apricot seeds. The little teardrop seed inside of the apricot pit,
Yeah.
huge amounts of C17 or B17.
Oh,
So I keep calling it C, sorry.
that's okay.
But B17 was destroying cancer cells. So they created a drug out of it called Laetrile, and it was working really well. I mean, it was, curing cancer
I
like
wonder,
that.
this may be beyond your expertise or not. I don't know. I'm curious why. Well, what is it about B17 that destroys cancer cells? How do you know
Okay,
about that
I'm glad
mechanism?
you asked that. It's actually, it's very interesting the way it works. Okay,
Okay.
so and I know it's going to sound crazy at first, but once it's
Uh-huh.
explained to you, then you'll understand. But it's basically cyanide. Okay, it's molecules of cyanide, but it's attached with a double bond to a sugar. Okay, so basically it's inert, it's
Okay.
non-toxic to the body. Cyanide in its singular form is extremely toxic. We know it'll kill
Right.
you, right? And that's why the whole myth of people telling you if you eat apple seeds, that's cyanide. Okay, that's an absolute myth. I eat apple seeds all the time, and I'm
I
not
do
dead yet.
too. I love them. Actually, I love them in the Granny Smith ones.
Yeah,
They're kind of
they're
bitter and
good.
tart. Yeah. I
I
like them.
agree. So what happens is there's only one uh, enzyme that can break that bond and free the cyanide into a cyanide that will kill, right? The only place that actually exists is inside of a cancer cell. Okay, so what happens is you can eat as much, the B17 or the apricot pits or the apple seeds, and it'll go around your body. And if it never finds cancer, you'll just pee it out. It's
Right.
basically non-toxic to the body. The minute it finds a cancer cell, it enters the cancer cell. That enzyme breaks up the cell, and the cyanide kills the cancer cell, and then your body just sweeps it out. It's amazing how it works.
So the cyanide breaks up the cancer cell.
Yeah, it kills the cancer cell. Yeah.
Wow.
And
How
so
fascinating.
now, that being said, if you take too much of it, you might overwhelm, the cancer, in possibly some cyanide could leak in your body. That's why a lot of times back in the day, 50, 60 years ago,
Mhm.
people would get skin cancer. The doctor would bring out the apricot seed and give it to you, right? This was actually common known science. But see, Big Pharma
Wow.
didn't like that because their interest is not to cure cancer, it's to treat it, right? They make
Right.
$40
That's
billion
where the money
a
is.
year,
Yeah.
right, on cancer treatments. So the way that they discredited Laetrile is they took a bunch of people that were already ravaged by cancer. They'd already had radiation treatments. They'd already been sick and been treated and were on their deathbed. They would inject them with Laetrile, and then they would pass away anyway. I mean, they literally found patients that were on death's door, gave them Laetrile, and they died, but they died cancer free. And then they said, "Look, Laetrile's killing people. We need to ban it," and they banned it. You can still get it to this day, but you got to go to Mexico to get it. So G. Edward Griffin talks about this guy who had cancer, and they basically told him to go home and die. And he said, "No, I'm not going to die." And he flew to Mexico and smuggled back some Laetrile. He had no idea how to use it. So he just injected himself with a bunch of it. Come to find out, he injected himself with 40 times the amount that he was supposed to inject himself with.
Oops.
He slept for 4 days, and he woke up, went to the doctor, and he was cancer free. And this was a guy dying from stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Okay, so yeah, and that's just one of the many cures that they have for cancer that they've been hiding from us. Um,
Wow.
but yeah, so my type of practice that I like to help my people with, because I'm going to be honest with you, it's very, very hard for me to go to work anymore, but I have to pay my mortgage, I have to feed my children, and I mean, it's getting harder and harder by the day, because I watch what is going on with these people, and I observe and I see the medications they're on, and they
Wow.
cure nothing. They literally side effect dose these people to death by shutting down certain systems. And your body is a very well-tuned engine. Okay,
Huh.
just imagine. Okay, too much oil might cause this problem, so we're going to take 2 quarts out, and you can run your 5 engine engine on 3 quarts of oil. What do you think is going to happen over time? Things are going to start breaking. Your
Right.
body is created to be a system that works integratedly from top to bottom with itself. And when you start removing things like Big Pharma does, other
Yeah.
things are going to have problems. That's why you see a person who takes 1 pill,
Yeah.
10 years later, they're on 10 pills,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I see the patterns of people. I know what's causing the dementia. I know why people have cholesterol issues, and it's not what we're being told, right? So drugs are the #2 selling drug in the world, and it's an absolute and total scam because
Wow.
I think, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on this, but if I remember correctly, they discovered it by accident. I think they were trying to make a diabetes medication, and they realized it actually lowered your serum cholesterol,
Oh,
right?
interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So then they decided, well, we have to come up with a disease so we can sell this drug, right? So what's going on in your body when you have high cholesterol, high LDL cholesterol? It's not even cholesterol. See, science is finding out now. Well, it's coming out now. They've known it for decades that there is no correlation between the cholesterol you eat in food and high
Right.
cholesterol and heart disease. There's no correlation there, but they tell us over and over again that there is.
Right.
So what's really going on in the body when you have high cholesterol is when you eat bad foods, right? Foods that, like oils in a bottle, things like that. Wheat gluten that's sprayed with Roundup, which we're all eating. If you're eating any kind of wheat, it starts causing little pockets of inflammation in the body. Okay, and once you start getting inflammation and it starts to go systemic, and your body's in this whole state of fight or flight all the time, you're in this state of inflammation all over your body. Your arteries start to do this. They swell. Okay,
Right.
when they swell on the inside, they start cracking. And that's when your body will start creating LDL cholesterol, and it will start creating plaque. Okay, or it'll start creating plaque. Plaque will act as a band-aid for your arteries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when your plaque starts to build up enough, your body, in order to achieve homeostasis, this balance that it has to keep, right? It
Mm-hmm.
starts making cholesterol. And
Well, it's different types of cholesterol, right? Because cholesterol is also like a lubricant that helps clean, and what the word, transport toxins. So
exactly, and that's exactly what it's doing. So when your LDL cholesterol goes up, now let's analyze what LDL stands for and HDL stands for. It
Mhm.
stands for high density lipoproteins. It's a
Right.
protein, right? It's a protein carrier.
Mm-hmm.
Cholesterol itself cannot go around your blood system because it's oil and water. You
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Yep.
They don't match. So it has to be encased in a protein carrier, and that's where your LDL comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
LDL, they call it your bad cholesterol, because what it's doing is it's transporting the cholesterol out of your body. So it when you get this inflammation and you start, getting your clog up in your arteries with all this plaque, the LDL comes out and starts picking parts of that plaque off and carrying it out of your body. It's a self-defense mechanism so you don't clog up and you can keep blood flow throughout your body. So when a doctor comes along and he puts you on a statin drug, a cholesterol lowering drug, and he's
Right.
taking away your LDL, he is killing you. He's taking away your self-defense mechanism. And that's
Right.
why all people on statin drugs end up dying of heart disease, right?
Right.
It's a total scam from top to bottom. And they know this. I mean, come on. If a dietitian from Columbus, Ohio knows this, they know this. All right.
Well,
So
I think you're kind of selling yourself short there, but yeah. They
but
know.
and here's the funny thing though, is I understand now how important my field is to the world, right?
For
Because
sure.
I'm talking to this doctor that I used to work with years ago, and he we're working together, we're talking, and all of a sudden he goes, "Oh, I forgot to take my water pill." And I look at him and I go, "Water pill?" It's like,
Nice.
"How many medications are you on? Can I ask?" And he told me he's on 6. And I'm like, "Well, it's obvious to me you have some ascites going on. You got some problems going on with your liver." I mean, he had this big bulging belly. This is a doctor. I mean, this guy was big, and he was a
Right.
doctor. And I said to him, "Do you ever consider nutrition as an alternative?" And
Right.
and you know what he told me?
No.
They don't teach us that. That
No,
was
I've heard they teach like 1 week.
No, it's like 1 hour. They get
Oh,
1 hour of nutrition, and I'm not talking a credit hour. I'm talking 1 hour.
1 hour.
Literally, they go to like a symposium. A guy talks
Uh-huh.
for an hour about nutrition, and that's it. That's all they get. Big Pharma does not want them to know proper nutrition,
It's
right?
crazy.
It is. So about the cholesterol, this is how much your body actually makes cholesterol. It's so important to
Yeah.
your body that your body makes it, right?
Yep.
Do you understand that every day your body makes 3,000 strips of bacon worth of cholesterol per day?
Yes.
So you think me eating a little bit of red meat is going to affect that? Not in any way.
Yeah. No.
So this whole narrative about, how meat is bad for you. I've actually heard vegans. I cannot argue with those people anymore. I'm sorry, but that is the worst diet that you could put yourself on, because you are eliminating your number one food,
Yep.
right?
Well,
Okay.
and it's the most so you know how important protein is, right?
Oh
And it's
yeah.
the most bioavailable form of protein is red meat. It's the most similar to our molecular structure, so we absorb it much more readily than like a plant protein, like pea protein. We're only absorbing a certain, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a much lower percentage. So you'd actually need that many more grams per, you know,
Well,
amount
and
of
it's
that
incomplete as well. You're
protein. Right.
never. And here's the thing that I love to tell vegans, and they don't like to hear this, but it's the truth. Okay.
Yeah.
The I, I'm not opposed to a plant-based diet if you supplement correctly. And the problem is people don't supplement correctly, because I get it. I get the moral implications that vegans feel. The problem is this: is they attach human emotions to animals, okay, and they're not. Okay, so when a
If
gazelle's
that's
out.
the reason. I mean, people have different reasons for veganism, but for that reason, sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like vegans, or a gazelle will be out in a field eating, correct?
Right.
And then all of a sudden a lion will jump out and try to eat that gazelle. The gazelle will go instantly into fight or flight mode and run its butt off as fast as it can, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the gazelle is successful at ditching the lion and getting away, 5 minutes later, he's right back to eating again, and he doesn't think about anything else but the eating,
Right.
right? They don't sit back and go, "Oh my God, PTSD, I need to talk to my therapist. Joe's not going to believe what just happened." It doesn't work that way. Animals don't think like humans,
Right.
right? But we
They
love
don't
to
have
attach.
consciousness. They don't have free will.
Right. So yes, I've seen the videos where they're petting the cow, and the cow looks like it's smiling and it's happy and all that. All that cow knows is human touch me, it feels good. That's it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the
They have
funny thing
nerve
is,
endings. Nerve endings aren't quite the same as having an emotional attachment.
right.
Yeah.
So the cool thing is that another one that I like to throw at them that they don't like as well is plants are just as conscious and might even have a higher consciousness than
Oh, when I
animals.
had to do my yoga teacher training, that one was really hard to sit through.
No. So,
Yeah.
I can only imagine that. So basically, there was a couple scientists, and David Wilcock, if you know who he is, he
Yep.
actually had him on one of his shows.
Right.
And this scientist proved that plants are just as smart, if not smarter than animals, and actually talk to each other, communicate, read energy from people, and know if you're going to harm it. And basically, the way they communicate is sonar, like a bat. Okay, we cannot hear that because you have this range of all these, decibels of sound. We can only hear
Yeah.
about this much of that range, right?
Right.
That's why
Like
we can't.
dogs hear a much higher frequencies than we do. Yeah.
I was just about to
And we're
say
much
dog
further
whistle.
away.
Yeah,
They can hear
yeah.
like up to 200 feet. Crazy. Yeah.
Amazing, isn't it?
Mhm.
Their smell is much better too.
Well, yeah.
But so this guy put these sonar sensors by these plants, and then he started talking, and saying things like, I'm going to kill this plant and eat it. And the plant would start screaming, ah! Like it was super loud, like it knew. And that's why bats live in caves. They don't like to sleep outside, and they try to find a quiet place where there's no vegetation, because all they hear is plant chatter all night. So it's very strange, but it was cool. Like it knew, like the guy was just saying, like, with his intentions, I'm going to kill this plant and eat it. And the plant started freaking out. So
Wow.
just because we don't understand or able to hear or communicate with plants doesn't mean it's not living. So you've attached these human qualities onto an animal. Well, I attach human qualities on a plant. What are you going to eat? Rocks and sticks? It's like the whole narrative of the poor animals and all that stuff. Hey,
So the plant had consciousness, or it was just a communicate? I'm not following.
I think what it is plants sense energy because they're sonar users.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and also because of photosynthesis. So I mean, what they're taking in literally is the sun's energy. So
bingo.
That's
right.
how they grow. That's how they survive. So they absolutely feed off energy, literally.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. That's not quite the same thing as having like a conversation.
Right.
It's not the same thing as free will. Free will component here, I think.
Right. And they I'm sure maybe they have conversations between each other, but the funny thing is,
yeah.
So the funny thing is just because we can't understand them, it doesn't mean that they're not alive beings and things like that, right? So
absolutely a live being. Yeah.
Right. So I think the whole narrative of I can't eat animals. Now that being said, I'm not an animal cruel person. I love animals. I have dogs, I have cats, I have animals. I love animals, and I actually kind of understand and can kind of stand with vegans on some issues, like industrial farming. I mean, have you seen the videos where the guy takes the drone and he flies over the pig farm?
I mean, I think humane, sustainable farming is really important, and it's better quality for humans as well. I mean, it is an ecosystem, and it is circle of life. Absolutely, and so everybody benefits from humane farming.
Right, and I don't like how they pile these animals into close quarters and they take the patients away from them
or
instantly.
like the chickens in those dark cages where they're smashed together. I mean, that's horrible. And again, it's not good quality for the humans who are eating those chickens that are being. So it's personally, I have kind of like it's a double-edged sword, because I think that modern industrialization of I call it big food. But there are blessings to that. There are people who would not be able to afford to eat, otherwise, that this has been able to reach masses at a much lower cost per capita, so there is a blessing in that, but there's a consequence and a sacrifice as well. The quality is much lower. The humanitarian practices are compromised, and the in terms of the chain, everyone suffers as a result. So there's both pluses and minuses on both sides of it.
Yeah.
But I think more that there are more humane practices and more sustainable farming that we can support. I mean, personally, I feel blessed that I can make those choices, and I always choose, and I'm very careful about where the meat was sourced, and who I buy from, and I look into all of that sort of things, both for my own personal health and because I care about how the animals were treated.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually had my own meat dealer for a while there when I I lived in Youngstown. I grew up in Columbus. I ended up moving to Youngstown for 10 years, and then I moved back recently. But I had a guy who was, he ran a sustainable farm. He had all of his stuff was free range, no GMO. It was all really good stuff, and it was a little pricey, but I was
Yeah,
willing to pay that extra to
it's
just make sure.
smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So getting back to what I actually do, though.
One other thing I want to add to that, though,
Sure.
is that there's this. So people are so against hunting. The thing about hunters is they're literally like cavemen. They hunt them. They eat what they hunt. Like that is actually how man was supposed to survive. So
That's how we
it's
survive
kind of like,
forever.
yeah, and so they look down on them like that. That's like the most immoral thing. I'm like, actually, if we're discussing morality alone, that's probably morally superior.
All
If
right, I
we're
agree.
really honest about it. So
Yeah. So basically, my holism is a Christian sect of medicine. Okay, it believes that we are of God. God created us perfect. And as long as we have all the raw materials that our body needs at all times, you
perfect in
should,
whole, like at the
right.
definition. Yeah.
Now, mind you, there's birth defects and things like that. But what I mean by that is most people are born with a system that works perfectly. And everything, as long as you have all the raw materials you need, everything will work harmoniously and you will achieve perfect health. And that's kind of the way that I approach things when I counsel people. And I've had some really great clients that, have stuck with me and had wonderful results. To me, my scientific study is into biology. Okay, I want to know exactly every mechanism, every mineral, every enzyme, every cofactor, everything that makes every process in your body work. And that's what I dedicate a lot of my studying to, right? Because I've had a lot of issues, and the way that I got into what I'm doing is I was extremely overweight. I had ED, I had cholesterol issues, I had high triglycerides, and all these issues. And my doctor scared the life out of me. And this was in my 30s. And he basically
Oh,
said to me that, hey, you're young, man. If you don't do something, if you start feeling chest pains, I mean, my HDL cholesterol was 14. That is extremely, extremely low. And my
yeah.
triglycerides were in the 300s. And
Whoa.
that is the true measure of heart disease. If you have,
Yeah.
yeah, your triglycerides to your HDL ratio, if it's more than 4 to 1, you're at risk for heart disease. That's the
For
true measure.
sure. That's way, yeah, super high.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was really, really in bad shape, and that scared the life out of me. And I said, I've got to do something. So I'm sitting and trying to figure out, how do I go about this? I didn't know anything about science at all. At the time, I was a mechanic, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of bounced around fields for a while to find
Mhm.
what really spoke to me.
Similar,
And
you transferred, the mechanism of a vehicle to human.
the body, yeah. And I'd
Yeah.
always been a like kind of a sciencey guy anyway.
Yeah.
But I was also very rebellious.
Mhm.
I have issues with being told what to do. Um, so I'm very
Disagreeable personality. Yeah.
right. It's not that I'm disagreeable. It's
Oh,
just
I meant it in like the clinical psychological sense. Like you don't like to. You're an independent thinker.
right.
It's on the scale of like agreeable, disagreeable. You would be more disagreeable.
Definitely disagreeable. Yes.
Mhm.
Um, so basically, I was sitting there and I was having pain up my legs, and that was, I was having like restless legs, and that was the reason why I went to the doctor in the first place. And then he
Oh,
discovered all this stuff about me, and I was very overweight at the time. And I was sitting watching TV because I didn't know where to go with this. I didn't know, at the time I couldn't afford, to buy a dietitian. I couldn't do all this stuff. So I'm sitting watching TV, and it was like God spoke to me and showed me the direction of where I needed to go.
hmm.
There was this show, and it only went, I think, 7 episodes for one season, and it got canceled. And I don't know why, because it was the greatest show ever. But it was a guy, it was called I Want to Save Your Life. and I think you can find this show on Netflix,
Okay.
right? And what he did was, and he was this guy, and he was kind of like a flamboyantly gay guy, but he was great. Like he had the coolest personality. He was fun. He was outgoing. And what he would do is he was a registered dietitian and he was an exercise scientist.
Okay.
What he would do is he would go to these people's houses, and most of all of his patients were basically middle-aged, obese housewives, right? And what he would do is he would knock on the door, they would open the door, and he'd be like, "Hi, I'm here," and he'd take me to your kitchen would be the first thing he'd say. He'd haul in this huge trash can, right? And he would just start going through the cabinets, the refrigerator. You don't need this. It's garbage. This is junk. And he would explain to them why it was bad and why you shouldn't eat that thing, right? So he'd throw all this food away, and then he'd be like, "Let's get in the car." And he would get in the car. They would go to the grocery store. He would take these people and go, "Okay, this is a label. This is what you need to look for. These are the types of things," taught him how to read a label, taught him how to shop appropriately for good stuff.
Right.
They'd come back to the house. Then he'd be like, "Okay, let's cook a meal." And he would cook them meal. He would use spices. I mean, this guy was like a culinary guy. He was like the jack of nutrition trades, right?
Right.
And so he would cook them this wonderful meal, and it tasted good, and they would try it, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's pretty good." And it's like, so you don't have to eat crap all the time. You can eat good food and make it taste good. Right?
Yeah.
Then he'd be like, "Get your clothes on. We're going to working out." He'd take him and work him to death. And he did this for 30 days. He would like see him every day. He would be like, "How's your eating? What are you eating?" Have him take a log and all this stuff. He'd work out with them every day. And then after 30 days, he'd be like, "You're on your own. See you in 6 months." He would come back in 6 months, and they would be transformed. And this is kind of what my business model is, right? At that point, I had an epiphany, and this was like days after I went to the doctor, and he told me that I'm going to die young if I don't do something, right? So I saw this and I went, "That's it. That's what I want to do." And in 2 weeks I was back in college, and I never looked back. I went straight. Yeah, that's
amazing.
So that was my goal. And when I was in college, I knew I would have to establish myself first, start over making a living and all that stuff. So I said, I'll get into long-term care because I love the elderly. They're the most interesting people. They got the greatest stories.
They do.
So I said, I'll do, long-term care for a couple years until I can get myself established, and then I'll start my own business. 6 years later, here I am, right? Still doing the same thing.
Right.
I do have clients. I do counsel, but it's not enough for me to transition out of long-term care, which I'm dying to do. But I'll get there. I know I'll get there because I know my system works,
Yeah.
And the way I look at things is it's a triad. And the biggest difficulty that I've had with this is getting people to change. It's so difficult to make somebody want to change and do something for themselves that's going to help, right? Because I'll tell people, they'll look at me, that I hadn't seen in years, and they'll go, "Oh my God, you look so great. You're so fit. How did you do it? I want that, tell me a good diet," right? And I'll tell them, "You got to stop eating so many carbs. You got to cut out the sugar. You got to I can't do that." That's what they say. "Oh, I can't get rid of my sweets."
Like, give me the magical pill.
That's the problem, is we're an instant gratification society where we want somebody to just hand us a pill and the weight falls off. But I got news for you. It's never going to happen, right? It's never going to be a thing. And there is pills that will help you burn fat and things like that. But at what cost? Your kidney, your liver? No. What bothers me also is when people say, "What diet are you on?" I'm not on a diet. I live a lifestyle.
Right.
And that's the attitude you have to have. It has to be a lifestyle for you. You have to change.
It has to be sustainable, because losing weight is actually not that, I don't want to say it's the easiest thing in the world, but it's not that difficult. To keep it off is really, really hard.
It is.
That's, to have a long lasting kind of lifestyle result, that's very difficult. And most people can do the initial, especially the first time they ever try, like usually that's actually pretty easy for them. And then they rebound and they usually gain more weight than they started with. And it's much harder the next time and subsequently thereafter.
Yeah, it's difficult. It is, but the great thing is the way I approach things nutritionally, it's going to be the hardest 4 days to week in your entire life. It's so hard to break those addictions, but once you get your body into a fat burning mode and your body's used to being, in that mode,
Sure.
it's really super easy to sustain. I mean, some days I get so busy I don't even eat and I don't even bat an eye, right? Because the thing with carbohydrates is when you're eating carbohydrates all the time, your body makes something called ghrelin, okay? And ghrelin tells your brain, I'm hungry, keep eating. And that's why you can go to a Chinese restaurant, eat a quart of rice, and a half hour later, you're ready to eat again because you just made a ton of ghrelin, right? And your body burns that carbohydrates really quickly. I mean, in all honesty, that's your body's preferred fuel. It's so easy for your body to break down glucose.
Which is why athletes do need more carbohydrates.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like one of the biggest mistakes I see all the time, when I was coaching CrossFit is like everybody goes on the paleo. Now, paleo doesn't have to be low carb, but a lot of people use it as a means for low carb, and their performance tanks because CrossFit is super glycolytic. It's more glycolytic than most training. Most training styles tend to be aerobic or anaerobic. And CrossFit's actually very glycolytic. You're usually in that, like, for people who don't know, the like 1 to 2 minute, like high intensity range, with a lot of intervals. And that's what you need. You need carbs to fuel that. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah. You're definitely the expert on that one. That's for sure. If you're doing like bodybuilding and it's non-cardio, if you're doing things like that, you can lean more heavily in the protein category and low carb.
Yep.
But yeah, when you're doing, cardio, things like CrossFit, you definitely need it. But the quality is what matters too.
Yeah.
Fruit carbs, vegetable carbs, those are good things. So
because of the micronutrients and the cofactors.
Right.
We were talking about earlier. Yep.
You know it. So the great thing is here's the thing though, like you got so many ends of the spectrum. You got guys like Sean Baker and all those guys who lean towards a carnivore style diet where it's just meat exclusively, which works for them. Because what I like to tell people is plants don't have everything meat has in them, but meat has everything that plants have in them, right?
Because animals eat plants.
Right. Exactly. And you can get certain things. I mean, there is workarounds, right? Like you don't really get the B vitamins that you need that are essential for brain health and energy and everything else like that from plants, but you can. There's certain things you can eat, shiitake mushrooms, you get, ahi flour, things like that. There's different ways that you can get your B vitamins as a vegan, but are you going to eat that stuff every day, all day and meet your needs? Absolutely not. It's the most deficient diet on the planet. You have to have the meat. You do. So what I've discovered in my journey is I've done carnivore, and I'll tell you what, I felt great, man. I was building muscle like crazy and all this different stuff. It was great. But I personally feel like the truth is in the middle, right? It's really good. There's certain things that you're going to get from from eating cruciferous greens that you could get from meat and things like that, but the potency of it by eating a big green smoothie or drinking eating a bunch of vegetables or something like that. I mean, there's certain benefits that you're going to get from doing that,
especially when it comes to hormonal balance. I mean, for men and women, but definitely for women.
Bang.
Yeah.
That's where I was getting to, the hormones, all that different stuff. I mean, so I think it's somewhere in the middle. Now, personally, don't tell anybody this other than the viewers that are going to watch this, but I don't like vegetables. I really don't. I'm not a fan. I force myself to eat them because I know I do, but I also, I'm a meat guy. Like you put
that's why you enjoy carnivore. Yeah.
It was great for me. It did really really good for me. But I just found when I need that endurance kick,
Yeah.
that's when I start piling on the vegetables.
Right.
So it's somewhere in the middle. So
I actually like I people think I'm very weird, but I actually like crave salads. Like I really crave salads.
I like salads, yeah.
Yeah, vegetables, but you
I'm
say
not against all vegetables.
okay.
I'm just not. It's not something that I
You're a
crave.
vegetable bigot, so you have
Kind of, yeah. I'm racist against certain
yeah.
vegetables, but
Only certain colored vegetables will you like.
right,
Yeah, got it.
No, I love asparagus though. I could eat that anytime.
They're great.
Yeah,
So asparagus,
broccoli.
for me, asparagus are a natural diuretic. I have glaucoma,
Mhm.
so asparagus are something I really like. I'm conscious to get. I mean, there are lots of other things, but it's one of those that's really great for glaucoma because it's natural
Yeah.
diuretic. Yep.
So what I really do is I love to work with people who are on medications because my goal is to get you off of them, right? I want you off that hamster wheel. Okay,
Yeah.
so what I do is I have this uncanny ability to diagnose people with my eyes and my brain, right? So I'll look at people, and mind you, I'm not a doctor. I know I have to be careful about what I say here. Um, but I can look at a person and see, a bulging belly and say, hey, you're having something going on with your liver because there's something that you can call that's called skinny fat. Okay.
Mhm.
You'll have a skinny person who doesn't have fat, but they got this big bulging belly. To
Right.
me, you've got fatty liver. You know what I'm saying? Or I can look at your eyes and see you're deficient in whatever, or you're having a thyroid issue. I know you're deficient in iodine. And I have this uncanny ability to somebody tells me something and they say, oh, I got this, going on with me. Okay, let me see your nails. I'll look at their nails and then I'll look at their eyes. I'll look at certain things and I'll say, oh, well, this is what's wrong with you. Here's how you
Oh,
fix the problem. And that's kind of what I do. I do
amazing.
I do like weight loss things, helping people with weight loss and stuff like that. But my true goal is freedom from the people that I can't stand, and that's big pharma and big agro. Okay.
Yes.
And I think what they're doing to us is very wrong. They know they're doing it. They're doing it willingly.
Hmm.
But I do believe that within the next 10 years or so, we're going to transition out of that, because you ask any person who tells, you ask any person if they think big pharma is corrupt, and they know, but still they go to their doctor and get on the medications. And I don't understand that, you
Right.
know?
And
So,
I have a question for you. Do you think that there are, medicines are necessary where like the big pharma, I don't know if it's necessarily big pharma, but where, holistic, like for something that's acute, or do you think there's any times where that's, the
well,
answer?
honestly, my view of allopathic medicine is this: they are the absolute best in the world, hands down, when it comes to breaking a leg, an organ failure, an accident. I mean, that's what allopathic medicine is. It's fixing what's broke. It's surgical care, right? That's how it
Right.
started. Okay, so
Sure.
is there situations? Okay, I could give you that. They're really good at bacterial infections, but honestly, that's not really working too much anymore. The antibiotics are kind of, you know,
Because people have
outgrowing their use.
overdone them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the problem. If you're in extreme pain, um,
Mhm.
I had a kidney stone back in the day when I was sick and out of shape, and it felt like somebody was driving a sword into my back. It was the worst pain I'd ever experienced. I don't like needles. I'm not a needle person. I don't like them.
Mhm.
But when they wheeled me in there, the lady's asking me all these BS questions, right? She's asking me question after question, and I'm sitting there in the chair going, because it hurts so bad. And then finally, I was just like, "Are you going to do something? Or are you just going to ask questions?" Like I literally, freaked out on it, right? Because it was so painful. So I go in there and I lay down on the table when they put me in there finally, and this guy pulls out this big IV needle, and I just looked at him and went, oh God, no. And he was like, do you want me to kill the pain or do you not? And I was like,
Right.
go ahead, and then finally he stuck it in, and it was like this wave of heat came over me and the pain just went away. And when that happened, kidney stone dropped right into the bladder.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like I peed it right out. Like he literally put the cup up there because of all the tension I was, my body was in the state of shock from it. But yeah, when it comes to pain relief, surgery care, things like that, allopathic medicine's great. Now, that being said, I don't encourage anybody to come off their medications immediately. What I will do is work with you to fix what is broken, which Big Pharma does not do. They just slap lipstick and band-aids on you, right?
Right.
And then working with your doctor, we can wean you down off of those medications. Here's a good example. Here's the problem though, is to me, what I do is I don't just attack what's wrong with your body. I don't attack this. I attack 3 points. Okay. And this is where your holism comes in. The 3 points are mind, body, and spirit. All 3 of those have to be aligned.
So I love this because I keep saying this. I feel like we are in an age where people are so focused on like mental health. We hear all this about the emotional health and mental health and physical health. Everybody's like very. I don't know that everybody goes about it the right way, but there's a lot of messaging about it. But spiritual health is completely forgotten. It's been completely abandoned, and you need all of them. We are mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual beings. We are not that age-old Descartesian question has been answered. We know that we are not mind or body. We are not mind and body. We are mind, body, spirit.
Absolutely, and that's the way I approach it. You have to be mentally ready to make a change in your life. And when I go to counsel somebody, and somebody reaches out to me, I'll talk to you for free, just to get to know where you're at, because I don't want you dropping $500 on me for a program and it be a waste of your time and money. Right. So I want you to get benefits about what I do and tell your friends about the changes that you made when they go, oh, wow, how did you get through this? How did you lose this weight? How did you do this? So my 3 goals for you are nutrify, detoxify, and repair. Okay, that's what I do, right? But I have a questionnaire that I'll ask you first, and I want to know things about you. And there's a disclaimer. There's certain questions that may be intense that I ask you, and you do not have to answer them if you don't want to. But I want to know things like, were you sexually abused as a child? Were you abused in any way? And things like that, because I need to understand what's going on in the mind of the person and how they're going to handle things. Because if you have a person who's been abused in their lifetime and they have this negative outlook about themselves and stuff, I need to help you understand that these things make you stronger. These things are happen to you for a reason.
Not only that, but have you read the body keeps the score?
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
Okay. So we literally store trauma in our bodies, like in our, physiological cells, not just emotionally and mentally. So when
exactly where I was going.
Healing. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly where I was going with it. That's why I want to know if you have these abuses, because these are things we need to talk about and release, right? Once you release them and you accept them, that's when you can move on with your life. Because the key to having success with your life and your health is to understand that these are just events, and these are things that have made you stronger, and things that you can get past and become a better human being and love yourself. Because if you do not love yourself, then there's no, how can you expect somebody else to love you?
Right. I think that's such a great, point to bring up and a topic to discuss with people, because I think it's so misconstrued these days. People talk about self-love and they think about like, a day at the spa, and the reality is not that I'm against them. They're wonderful. And I encourage people to enjoy them, but that people seem to have this misconception that self-love is like all this,
Narcissism.
woo-woo Care Bears kind of thing. And the opposite is actually closer to the truth. A lot of time it's really about kind of more tough love. It's about, being really honest with yourself and, giving yourself the things that you may need, which aren't always, the warm, fuzzy kind of things. So,
Right. Exactly. So I think that's the most important part is to understand somebody psychologically, understand their traumas, understand their trials and tribulations, and just, because look, I suffered some abuses in life. So these are things that I share with my clients as well. We can't be scared and hold these things inside, because when you hold these things inside, that's bad. Because I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Emoto.
no,
Uh,
no.
okay, so Dr. Emoto was a guy who did some experiments, and
Okay.
what he did with the experiments is, and you can do this yourself, you can try this at home. A lot of people do it with rice. Okay, so
Okay.
what he did was he took clean water. Okay,
Okay.
and he took the same batch of clean water and he put it in these petri dishes, and he would
Okay.
label each petri dish. One would be like hate, one would be love, one would be like I want to kill you, the other one would be like, you're beautiful. And then he would put his thoughts and intentions into that dish, basically based on what the dish was labeled. So
Right.
if he hated that dish, he would put all his energy and thoughts into I hate you, I want to kill you, you're worthless. Then he would flash freeze these petri dishes, and look it up sometime. It's so fascinating. Okay,
Right.
so what he did was, once he froze them, he would analyze them under a microscope, and the ones that had the negative connotation to them had no form. They were ugly, they were twisted, and all that. Right. So the one that had hate,
I've seen this with water particles. I think it was. Yeah.
that's it. This was his experiments.
Crystallization. Yeah.
Yeah. And the
It's
ones that said
fascinating.
love and beauty were the most perfect forms, symmetrically beautiful, like snowflakes and all that.
Oh.
So basically, your thoughts and your intention create your reality. And that's what he proved. So, have you ever heard of the double slit theory?
No.
Okay. So, I'm big time into quantum mechanics and things like that,
Yeah,
right?
I am too. But then that's where this is going. Yeah. So super excited for me.
So what the double slit theory was is the scientists took a steel plate, basically a lead line steel plate or something like that,
Mhm.
and they cut a rectangular hole in the middle. Okay, they put it up against a photosensitive background, right?
Mhm.
Like the photosensitive background is a
Is
little,
this the reciprocity with the proton study?
yeah, where
Okay.
they would
So I just
beam.
didn't know that's what it was called. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
called the
that's
double slit theory, because what they would did was they would beam this plate with a ion cannon, basically,
hmm
and the particles would go through there, and then it would leave a pattern on the background, right? The
right.
photosensitive background. So when they removed the plate, there was a rectangle in the background where the ions were hitting the photosensitive background. Well, then they made two slits, and they hit it with the ion cannon, and they would move it, and there was 10 rectangles in the background. Okay, they were just astonished by this. 10, there should be two technically. So what they figured out is energy moves it in a wave like water, right? Because if you
Yep.
did this in the bathtub, you would see the same results. It would hit the double slits, you would see 10 waves come out of that result, right?
hmm
So they wanted to figure out, why is this happening and how is this happening?
hmm
So they put a camera that was able to see the photons, or the ions or whatever they were shooting through there. They could see it with the camera as they were passing through the plates, right? As soon as they turned the camera on, there was two slits. There was two things on the background, not 10. Turn the camera off, went back to 10. Turn the camera on, went back to 2. This just absolutely blew their mind. Well,
Yeah.
the conclusion of the whole thing is, one single atom contains all possibility, all the trillions and quadrillions of possibilities that could
Yeah.
happen at any point in time is in a single atom. And once it's observed, it chooses a path. So once again, it's proving that you can create by your thoughts and intentions, right? So
Amazing.
so that's where I like to attack people on a spiritual level and show them that, hey, you don't have to let these things that happen to you define you. You know, they don't have to define you. These experiences were here to show you something. Okay, everything in life is a lesson.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can get people to understand that, and understand that if you want to be, you know, healthy, if you want to be thin, if you want to be off your medications, the choice is yours. Here's
Right.
the ball, take it and dribble, you know. And
Oh.
that's kind of how I approach everything. That's why I want to know everything about you. I want to know what you eat, what time you eat, do you get sleep, do you have psychological a trauma, do you have things like that. um, Once I get to know where a person is, then I know where to put my focus on
Sure.
you, right?
Yeah.
So
It's the
so that's kind of,
holistic.
yeah, I mean, it really is
Whole.
mind, body,
Yeah.
spirit. And that's where holism with a W comes in, right?
Right. Yeah,
That's
I
the,
love it.
it's the Holy Trinity, mind, body, and spirit, right?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's kind of,
I have a question, just personal for you. You said you
sure.
had restless leg syndrome,
Mhm.
right? That was one of the things that brought you to the doctor.
Yeah.
Did you cure it? How? What happened?
Yeah, actually I did. I didn't understand how or why at the time, but just simply eating correctly and changing my diet fixed the problem. But what restless leg syndrome, um, it's a thiamine deficiency. Okay, vitamin B1.
Thiamine? B1.
Thiamine.
Okay.
Yeah, B1
Thiamine.
thiamine.
Yeah.
Thiamine it plays a huge role in your nervous system, especially diabetics. You know, metformin itself actually destroys thiamine in your body. It's a black label medication, which means it's dangerous, right? So
Yep.
that's why
It's
diabetics a
from
lot get,
the it's
yeah,
from the French lily flower, and
yeah,
it's a very potent herb, and it depletes your B. Is it B12 or
B1,
B9?
yeah, B1,
B1. Right.
yeah, definitely. Oh,
I think it depletes your B12 as well, though,
it
because
actually
a lot
depletes
of
a,
people develop B12 deficiencies when I did after I was on metformin, and it
yeah.
created B12 deficiency for me. It may have created a B1 as well, but B12, they thought I might have had pernicious anemia.
Yeah, I was going
Yeah.
to ask if you had that. Yeah. And that's a big thing. And when you start getting, there's a whole host of B vitamins and other things as well that it absolutely zaps. Um, so that's where berry comes in, and that's what berry is actually what we discovered from a B1 deficiency, and that actually mocks a whole host of other diseases, and it's very hard to tell if you actually have that, right? And all it is a simple B1 deficiency. Peripheral neuropathy that diabetics get, all it takes is a B1. Uh, Congestive heart failure, people get all this edema and stuff like that, and it's COPD. They need thiamine, but see, this is not something that big pharma wants to acknowledge. I mean, these are simple things.
What has thiamine in it? I mean, obviously you can supplement with thiamine, but are there foods that are, yeah.
Eggs is probably the best you can do. I eat personally 6 eggs will get you the your daily recommended of thiamine. I
And
eat,
is it the yolk or the whole egg? What
you
is it?
have to eat the yolk. Absolutely.
So, but is that where it's most potent, or is it?
That's where it is.
Yeah.
If you
Okay.
get rid of the yolk, you're getting rid of all the good things in the egg. Okay. We're still living under this whole communist idea that eggs are bad for you and cholesterol is bad for you. And it's absolutely so far from the truth. I cannot express that. That's where the healthy stuff is. So when you see all these people with these, oh, I only eat the white of the egg, guess what? You're getting nothing. You're
Mm-hmm.
literally getting none of the nutrients. It's all in the yolk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't want to eat eggs, let's say a vegan person, it's very, very, very important that you get your B vitamins somehow. You also need essential fatty acids. You definitely need the thiamine, because thiamine is what helps you release the plaque from your brain. And so that's why people get dementia. I see it all the time. Vegetarians and vegans in the nursing home, they're all they all have dementia, and they're on statin drugs, another way to give you dementia. Because the most of your brain is made from 100% pure cholesterol. So if you're giving somebody a cholesterol lowering drug and their cholesterol bottoms out, welcome to dementia.
Yep.
You know? So, that's the thing is people just don't get it, But if you're a vegan, you have to look out for these things. You have to make sure you have the B vitamins, or you're going to develop a lot of issues. And it's funny because if you watch some of these vegan bloggers, they'll sit there and say things like, I'm just so energyless. I got brain fog all the time. I think it's the mold in the house. And they cannot figure it out that you're killing yourself with this diet. I'm all for you if you want to be a vegan. I can work with a vegan and do what I do with a vegan. But you're gonna be spending a lot of money in supplements. And part of the problem is all the soils are depleted anymore. We're one of the major things that I push for everybody that I counsel is iodine. You got to get iodine in your system because they're not replenishing the soil anymore with this industrial farming. See, back in the day when you had a regular farmer, an organic farmer, which they were all organic back then, what they used to do is they would burn these big wood pile fires, and then they would take the ashes and they would throw the ashes into the fields to replenish the field every year. That doesn't happen anymore in these big industrial farms where we're getting all this big industrial food. So there's no iodine in the food anymore. And for some reason,
that's why people have so many thyroid issues these days.
Oh, absolutely.
Rampant thyroid.
Rampant. Yeah. Also, thiamine kind of plays into that as well. So selenium, that's another one that people need constantly that we're not getting. So basically, these soils are depleted, and then you have people like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos who are buying up all the farmland. Bill Gates owns I can't remember the number, but it's like 400,000 acres of farmland or something astronomical like that. But I do know this: those two together, Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, own 2% of the planet. The entire planet, landmass, they own 2% of the planet. No two people on Earth should own 2% of the planet. And that's scary.
That's very scary.
And so
I have a question. I know Bill Gates is trying to dim the sun's rays.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how exactly does he expect all of his crops to grow? Don't they need sun?
He doesn't care about the crops growing. Bill Gates is a eugenicist. Let's just be honest about it, right? Right? So what Bill Gates really wants is control, right? He wants to be King Bill. He wants population control. I mean, he's openly admitted it. I mean, did you ever see his TED Talk?
I have.
Where he's talking about getting carbon to zero.
Yes, and if we, through vaccines and reproduction control, we can get the population down under 10%.
Yeah, 10 to 15%.
From 10% to 6. That's what he said, from 10 to 6.
Yeah. So I mean, we all know what Bill Gates is about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the practices that they do to take land from people through Monsanto, because Bill's a big investor in Monsanto, right?
Yep.
And it's disgusting what they do is they'll take an organic farmer and they'll, if it just happened that some of their GMO pollen happened to creep into your field and pollinate, they will sue you for stealing their intellectual property, and then they will take your farm from you. And that's what they've been doing for a very long time to farmers.
I didn't know that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. They'll give you a choice, and the choice will be now you grow our GMO seeds or we take your farm. So that's how they're taking over all these farms. So all they have to do is just have somebody in a black outfit in the dead of night, throw some pollen in their field, and then they can just take them over. And that's how they're owning all these farmers and doing it. So it's very disgusting and despicable and evil what these people are doing. And so we're supposed to have these watchdog organizations, the FDA, the USDA, and these organizations that are supposed to protect us and care about our health. But all they do is they hire their own people within Monsanto by they take their top lawyers and their lobbyists and stuff like that, and then they push one of their people, their corporate people or whatever, into the position of the USD and the FDA, and they lobby to get them elected so they could just rubber stamp everything for them, right? So we've had all these people that come out of Monsanto that are now in control of our government agencies, and that's, oh God, how do we get out of this, Courtney? I just don't know how we get out of this.
How do we get out of this?
Okay, so my solution would be this. Okay. Stop complying with their system. Start with the self-efficacy. You need to start caring about yourself. Educate yourself, learn about these things, and then take actions against them. One of the actions is stick with the organic foods. I know it's getting pricier, but here's the thing. Let's all bite the bullet on organic food right now, okay? And then as it comes more in demand and things like cheap GMO foods and stuff like that, people aren't buying them anymore. The market will shift over to a more organic setting, and the price will come down.
I do have a question about this. Because so much this is regulated, and all these agencies are involved. A lot of organic foods are not necessarily truly organic, right?
Right. So what it is you have two tiers basically of organic. You have certified organic, and then you have USDA organic. Okay. Certified organic only has to have 70% of it organic, right? So they, Annie's is a big label that's slick with this, and they'll slip GMO into their thing because 70% of the stuff that they used on their products is organic. So that's certified organic. Now, if you get USDA organic, you can have none, right? No pesticides, that unless they're organic certified, no GMO, anything like that. So you want to look for the label that has the USDA on it. And also, we're already starting a revolution though, Courtney. It's already here, and things are starting to change somewhat. And part of this revolution, which is what I'm all about. Look, I'm the John Wick of nutrition, man. I call doctors out. I will call big pharma out. I don't care, because I'm sick of this crap, right? Yeah. So one of the slick tactics that they did was lobby so we cannot label GMO. Now, I commend Campbell's Soup. They use all kinds of GMO in their food, but they were the ones that said, you know what? We're just going to be honest with people, and we don't care. And they put it right on their label. We use GMO in our products. And you know what?
Great. Transparency. Let the people choose. I mean, it's kind of like cigarettes, if somebody wants to smoke and they know it's going to kill them, then, they're taking their chances, and they may be that exception to the rule, and it doesn't, affect them. But more likely than not, it will. So, but they're taking their own risk, and they know the risk they're taking.
Yeah, but I commend Campbell's for that. Yeah, I don't like the fact that they use GMO, but the fact that they went transparent and just admitted it and put it on their label. Hey, man, great, good for you guys, awesome. And but Monsanto has been lobbying for so long to keep labeling off of their GMO products, and so we kind of went the opposite. Fine. Now we go with GMO certified project. Okay. So now the big revolution is I won't buy a product unless I see that label on there that says non-GMO certified or USDA organic.
Right.
Right. So that's where the revolution's heading, and it's expanding more and more.
I'm so sorry. I have another question for you.
Sure.
So with GMO, let's be really clear about that, because not all GMOs are bad. Like broccolini is one of my favorite foods. It is a GMO. They took broccoli and asparagus and made into a hybrid, and
Well, now there's a big difference there, though. Okay, mm-hmm. There's hybridization in genetically modifying. It's not the same thing. Okay, and this is where
don't they fall under the same umbrella sometimes, though?
It depends
in terms of what so I'd love you to go into that, because I think that's important for people to understand the distinctions and where the lines are with all of these things.
Take bananas, for example. People love to throw that one at me. Wow, you eat bananas and those have been genetically modified for 100 and 200 years. No, it has not. Okay. Excuse me. So what they have done is they take different species of a similar item, like a plantain, banana, different breeds of it, because there's all kinds of different, there's Cavendish, there's, your standard banana, there's all kinds of different ones. And what they will do is they will cross-pollinate and cross-breed so that you get a new breed, basically, from two different breeds, right?
Okay.
And that's been going on for thousands of years, probably. I mean, they've crossbred wheat. So it's completely different than it was 100 years ago. Completely different. And part of that is the gluten, which I want to get into that before we get off here.
You want to hear it? Yeah.
Yep. But what genetically modifying is basically they use a microscopic needle to inject DNA from a different species into another species that doesn't cross each other, right? So they're forcing hybridization through genetic modification, right? They're attacking it on the cellular
like the doodle
level.
dogs,
Right. Right. They can't make they can't mate with each other because their DNA doesn't match, but they can take the DNA and inject it into the DNA of another dog to make a different species. So yeah, there's they make genetically modified dogs that glow in the dark now, right? So the biggest problem, so now that we understand that, now I want to talk about wheat, because wheat is the biggest enemy of humanity right now. And the reason why is 93% of wheat in this country is Roundup Ready, genetically modified. So what they did is they injected DNA into this to make it resistant to Roundup. Okay. So they can spray the wheat all they want with Roundup, and everything around it dies. So they get bigger harvests. They don't have to worry about.
Just to clarify, that's what Roundup is so that everything around it dies.
Yeah, Roundup is a weed killer, and what it does is it replaces the amino acid glycine. Okay. That's where the word glyphosate comes in. It's a derivative of a genetically modified glycine. And when this gets into your body, it does the same thing, and it ruins your bones. It could cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and things like that, because it replaces the glycine in your body with glyphosate. Okay. And this was the problem.
It can cause lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's.
Oh, absolutely. Wow. Yeah, it's actually considered a class 3 carcinogen. And there's actually commercials on TV, if you watch, that if you got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from Roundup, call this number, right? So yeah, there was actually a rash last year of, I like horse racing. I'm a big Kentucky Derby guy. I love to watch the Derby and stuff. And
my dad loves that too. Yeah.
Oh, I just love it. Yeah. So there was this incident. Me too. It's been decades though. I'd probably kill myself if I tried it again. But my niece is a barrel racer, so she's trying to get me to come over and jump on her horses. Yeah, she's great. So basically, there was a rash of horses in Santa Anita that were breaking bones. Like they would race, and all of a sudden their leg would snap, and they'd have to put them down. And there was like dozens of horses that this was happening to over and over again. And they started getting some serious heat, from the government in California. Like, hey, you something not right is going here. They ended up blaming this trainer for his training practices, and banned him for life from horse racing and all this stuff. When the problem was that they spray Roundup all over the place in Santa Anita, right? So it's making these horses' bones soft because it's replacing the glycine in their bones with glyphosate, and then they're snapping legs left and right. So they had this doctor or the scientist that was a specialist in glyphosate in biology, and he was like a 30-year veterinarian, a horse veterinarian. He called Santa Anita, and he wanted to talk to the guy who owned Santa Anita, and he said, hey, I just want to call and talk to you about this horse leg breaking incident that you're having here. I think I know what's wrong. And the guy literally said to him, don't give me this glyphosate crap. He pronounced it wrong. And he was like, that's already been debunked. And he hung up on it. All right. So Big Pharma got in there, and Big Agro got in there and got to this guy and said, you should keep your mouth shut. It's not the glyphosate. And so that's basically what happened. So they, instead of, fixing the problem over there with the Roundup that they were spraying all over the place,
Right.
they used a scapegoat and ruined a trainer's life, basically. And that's disgusting.
That is disgusting.
So here's the problem with wheat. Okay, so 93% of it is Roundup ready. So they genetically modified this wheat in our country to be resistant to Roundup. So Roundup will not replace the glycine in the weed and kill it, right? Because that's what it does.
Right.
When you spray it on a weed, it pulls the glycine out of the weed, and the weed starves to death and it dies. Okay, and that's how it works. Sure. So once it's Roundup ready and it's resistant to Roundup, they can spray it all over the place, and then they don't have weeds growing up and leaching nutrients from the wheat, right? Okay. So in theory, which is absolutely debunked, it doesn't really improve things like they say, but they said you'll get bigger harvests and all this stuff. So the gluten, which we never used to use back in the day, that was the waste product. We used to throw the gluten out, and that's why bread, if you look at bread 100 years ago, it was light and fluffy in the middle and hard as a rock on the outside, right? And they used to break bread. That's why they said break bread. Now it's tear bread or stretch bread. Back then it was break bread because it was really crispy like a cookie on the outside, and then you have your light fluffy in the middle, right? So what they did was they started using gluten years and years ago, and now we get these heavy, stretchy doughs where we can throw the pizzas up in the air and catch them, and all this pasta and all these different things. But the problem is 93% of it being Roundup ready in this country, they're spraying the hell out of it, and that wheat gluten is like a sponge. It sucks that stuff in and retains it. And then, of course, Monsanto lies and they say, oh, it never makes it to the table. That washes off and all that. They're lying. Okay. They found it in women's breast milk. They found it all over the place. Okay. We're getting poisoned by it constantly. It's in the water systems now. It's in all kinds of stuff. If you are not filtering your water and you're drinking tap water and you don't have a reverse osmosis or one of those canister filters that takes all that stuff out, you're poisoning yourself. So keep that in mind. Now, the 7% that's not sprayed with Roundup, the conventional wheat that's not Roundup ready, that's not genetically modified, they spray it at the end of the harvest with Roundup to kill the wheat. So it all dies at the same time. It acts as a drying agent, a desiccant. And then, they harvest it all at once and it dries out really easily, right? So now, not only does Roundup replace the glycine in your body and hurt you that way, but it's also one of the world's most powerful antibacterials. So when you're eating it, what's that doing? It's destroying your gut biome.
Yeah.
That is the single problem with the entire country right now. That's why everybody has a weak belly. Everybody has chronic diseases. It all comes back to one thing.
And that's why we're seeing the rise of psychiatric disorders as well, because you're all of your neurotransmitters
are getting trashed.
You have so many of them in your gut.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So now, so that's it's unbelievable to me that they've gotten away with this so long and nobody's done anything about it. Yeah, they're getting sued. But as soon as you walk into your favorite hardware store, what's the first thing you see as soon as you walk in? Roundup right there. Every year, this time of year, they're pushing it out the door, right? So I don't understand why nobody's doing anything about it. But if you think about it, who owns Roundup? Monsanto. Who owns the FDA and USDA? Monsanto. So until somebody actually goes in there and forces them to do something about it, but they like to use blackmail and payoffs and everything else. So we're kind of screwed at the moment,
So isn't Monsanto technically then considered like a monopoly?
They are the monopoly. Yes. Yeah.
I was trying to be tactful, but yeah. So why aren't they in violation of antitrust laws? Why is nobody bringing that up?
And why is Jeff Bezos not in violation of antitrust laws? I mean, he
I guess we go through a long list of who's, yeah.
Right. Like, look what he does to his own people. Like, he opened up the marketplace, right? So he can get a bunch of people to come in and sell their goods through his marketplace and all that stuff. So what they'll do is they'll take the most successful people in marketplace, they undercut them, and they sell that same product on their website, so you won't use the marketplace anymore. So he's putting people out of business constantly, right? So yeah, he's got a monopoly. So now, as far as the wheat gluten itself, let's just discount the Roundup completely. Let's say you're eating organic. You get your organic wheat and you're eating that. Most people in this country cannot break down wheat gluten in their system. The reason why is it's because it's these long chains of amino acids, right? And they're linked together with these very strong bonds. So your gut, excuse me, especially if it's already been damaged, will have a very, very hard time breaking that down. Imagine, if you will, sucking pearls into a vacuum cleaner. So that alone by itself, without Roundup, damages your gut. And most people are very, very sensitive to it, myself included. So we should never be eating wheat gluten as it is. And there's really good alternatives out there. Guar gum's good, xanthan gum's good. So it's not like
I've heard a lot of people say xanthan gum is not good.
Well, I mean, it works good as far as what it'll do to you. You know what? There's who knows how we get the real truth?
Sure, yeah.
Right, and who knows if we're getting the real truth? I mean, for ages they told us red meat and eggs will kill you, and the way they did that, this is sneaky. This is again getting back to the big pharma and big agro monopoly and how they discredit things.
Yeah,
is the way they discredited red meat, and it was a marketing tactic. And what they did was they wanted to prove that fats were bad so they could start this whole fat-free revolution. You remember back in the 80s, the SnackWells?
Yeah.
Right. Everybody was eating these SnackWells and they were getting fat and they were going, hey, these are supposed to be fat-free and healthy, right? Well, what they did is they ran a study on fats and what fats will do to you and how they're linked to heart disease. And they in the mix, they didn't even do the scientific study correctly. What they did is and this is on purpose, because you have to understand, nutrition science is the most underfunded science in the world. And most of the studies are terrible. And I'll tell you why. And this is the way Big Pharma wants it, right? And it'll never change. Same reason why they will never FDA approve vitamins. They want you to buy trash vitamins, because then when they don't work, you'll come to them for their pills, right? So what they did is they mixed trans fats. A trans fat even in the tiniest amount will cause so much damage to your body and inflammation.
It's so inflammatory. Yeah.
Right. And it takes such a small amount. If they have less than 1% saturated fat in a product, but it's less than 1%, they can list it as 0. Right. So they'll tell you something on the label, 0 trans fat.
Not saturated.
No, trans. Did I say saturated?
You said saturated. Okay.
No, saturated is good fat. You want that.
Yeah. No, I know. Saturated is like coconut. That's saturated fat.
Right. So, right. Red meat, saturated fat. So the trans fats, if it's less than 1%, they can put 0 on the label. Right. So they'll tell you there's 0 trans fats in there, but when you're eating,
so it could be like 0.9 and they can
right. Yeah. And they can get away with it. That can cause serious damage to your body. So the way you figure out if something has trans fats in it but says 0 trans fats is you look for the word hydrolyzed or hydrolyzed. I can't say it correctly.
Hydrolyzed.
If you see if you see
I can.
Right. So if you see hydrolyzed palm oil or something like that, that's trans fat right there. Throw it out. So basically, what they did was they mixed saturated fat in with trans fats and then recorded the results of what happened there with the people. Their cholesterol went up, their heart disease increased. Fat's bad for you. Let's make SnackWells, right? That study was one study. There's been over 4,000 other studies since that have been solely focused on saturated fat that have proven that saturated fat does not cause heart disease. But yet we are still stuck on this damn mindset that saturated fat will cause heart disease. It's an absolute deception from the start, right? So that's the problem, is we need to forget everything we know about nutrition and reprogram ourselves, because it's all been lies from the start. This is how they do a nutrition study, okay? And this is another way that they trick us into thinking that protein is bad. Meat protein is terrible for you. They literally go to a
Protein?
popular, meat proteins
Oh,
are
meat.
bad for you,
Okay.
is the way they're saying it. And the way they say it is, they'll go into a population of people. Let's say I get assigned to my city. I go out and start surveying people. Most nutrition studies are survey or in correlation studies. Okay,
Right.
so what they'll do is they'll walk up to a person and go, "Hey, do you have a history of heart disease in your family?" "Yes." "Do you eat meat?" "Yes." "Okay, do you have a history of heart disease in your family?" "No, I've never had heart disease, nor anyone in my family." "Do you eat meat?" "Oh no, I'm a vegan." Meat causes heart disease. That's literally how they do nutrition studies. So that's why I tell you I'm the John Wick of nutrition, because I am here to blast through all that BS and
Right.
teach people what real clinically verified nutrition is. Okay. And what clinically verified nutrition is saturated fat is good for you. Eggs are the most nutritious thing you can put in your body, one of the most nutritious things. So when I hear all these things about meat causing diabetes, that is absolutely ridiculous, because I can tell you what diabetes actually is.
Well, and
Diabetes.
before you go into what diabetes is, if we just look back in history, well, why is it that there's such a rise in diabetes when less and less people are eating meat now than were before?
I
If
know.
meat is what's causing it.
Look, we have been on this planet for hundreds of thousands to millions of years for all we know. We survived being hunters for millennia. We
Yep.
didn't even invent agriculture and carbohydrate eating until what, a few thousand years ago at the least. So
Yep.
how did we come up all of that time when we weren't eating carbs? I hear the most ridiculous
But we
things
were
from
eating
people.
carbs, but we weren't eating processed carbs. Yeah.
Right, right. I mean, hell, back in the
Vegetables and
day,
fruits, and yeah, root vegetables are very high in carbohydrates, but it's
it
it's not the same as a snack well.
but that was if you were lucky. I mean, think about when man was primitive,
Mhm.
okay? We didn't know how to have agriculture. If we were lucky, we found a tree with some fruit on it. So
Mhm.
so all the tribe gathered around and we had a
Yeah,
big feast and we ate all
and
the
it
apples.
and it depended a lot on what region of the world
Sure.
you were in. Some regions didn't have meat. I mean, there are parts of the world that they are vegetarian by historically, they because they didn't have access to
Right.
like in the Asian countries, they had lots of fish, but they didn't necessarily have cattle. So
Well,
yeah.
pescatarian though, like there's a good book out there called The China Study.
Hmm.
And that was a really interesting book. And this guy wanted to figure out why people in China didn't have heart disease, but people in America did.
Hmm.
And to save you money and a lot of time reading this book, because it gets kind of technical in parts,
Okay.
his conclusion was they eat fish. And it's the fish oil and the essential fatty acids within the fish oil that keeps them from getting heart disease.
Yeah.
So again, now you're going back to vegans. They're
And
not
it's
getting
also
essential fatty acids.
yes,
I'm
when
sorry.
you're offsetting with the, like omega 3s, omega 9s versus the omega 6, which are more
Right.
inflammatory. Yeah.
And that's a big thing here. You're
Yeah.
supposed to have this much omega-3 and this much omega-6 in the United States. We're
Yes.
this.
So for those
Okay.
who are listening, not watching, that means you want a lot less omega 6. We have a very high omega 6 rich diet in the United States. We want more omega 3s, more omega 9s. Those are anti inflammatory versus omega 6, which are highly inflammatory.
Bingo. You got it. So man, you know your stuff. I'm telling you, you're very smart. I like it. So that's part of the problem is, we've been duped for so long. Now you got Bill Gates wanting to push his meatless meat on you. That is so disgusting. I look at that stuff and I want to vomit. It's just gross. Okay, so you're making synthetic meat in a laboratory and you're telling people that that's healthier than you going out and eating an organic steak. It's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. We have been lied to from top to bottom about everything in science in our world. And I think it's about time to start a damn revolution and start fighting back against these people. And look, I don't want to get rich. It would be nice to live in a mansion and have nice cars and all, but I don't care. I don't really care about that. What I care about is stopping these people from killing us, educating people, and motivating people to change their lives and live healthy. That's the only way we're going to get out of this hole we're in, because we're in such a deep hole with deep-rooted corruption in every part of our society. And the only way we're going to get around that is knowledge. We have to learn.
Absolutely. So I do want to ask, because I had interrupted you, my bad, but
that's okay.
Explain what diabetes is to people. And
okay. So diabetes, it's really a simple deficiency. Thiamine is another one that plays into that. Okay. Right. But what is really happening with the body? Okay. When you're pre-diabetic, they like to call it, or insulin resistant, what's going on is you eat a carbohydrate, your brain tells your pancreas, let's excrete some insulin, and insulin works as a key to a lock, right? So you have your cell here. Your cell needs to bring in that glucose, turn it into ATP, which is your energy source, your gasoline, and then everything's hunky-dory, you have energy, right? Yeah. So what happens is you have this cell, right? And this insulin comes along, and there's a slot cut into your cell basically where the insulin attaches, and it opens up these little doors on the cell, if you would imagine, right? Then that says, okay, the grocery comes in, everything gets processed and out. So when you're diabetic or insulin resistant, what they like to call it is, you excrete the insulin attaches into the receptor of the cell, and the doors are jammed. It don't open up. Okay. So what's Big Pharma's solution to that? Let's just give you more insulin. So they give you insulin, and then by volumetric pressure alone, it starts punching holes in the cells. And then before you know it, you're getting a foot cut off, right? Because your peripheral cells die first.
Or if you're pre-diabetic, they're giving you something like we described before.
Metformin, right. So then you end up with the problem never being corrected, because now you're stripping away your B vitamins, right? So it's a perpetuating cycle where they can keep you on that medication forever. And then eventually people on metformin go to being on sliding scale, right? And so they're getting insulin, and then next comes the neuropathy because you don't have your B vitamins, then dead cell destruction, and then you're getting legs cut off, feet cut off, toes cut off, right? Because everything's dying from them giving you all this insulin and stuff. So why did those doors not open up so that the glucose can go into the cells? It's very simple. It is a simple deficiency of trace minerals, chromium and vanadium. Okay. Chromium and vanadium are in trace amounts, right? And it's kind of hard to get it. Meat's a really good source. Also, you asked about thiamine. Another place you can get thiamine that's good, pork. Pork is loaded with thiamine. Okay. So as far as chromium and vanadium, you can get that, obviously through supplements. There's chromium in certain nuts and things like that. Selenium is another one you can get from nuts.
Brazil nuts are very high in selenium.
Love them. I love those things. So the problem is when you don't have the chromium and the vanadium and the thiamine, that those doors don't want to open up. Right. And when those doors don't open up, that's when your diabetes starts, and then it'll just progress over time, because what is it that uses up the most chromium and vanadium? Sugar.
Oh.
That's why they call it the sugar. Now, if you want my honest opinion, sugar should have never even been FDA approved. It's the most toxic, most acidic garbage you can put in your body. Now, am I anti-sugar? Well, I think every once in a while, a little sugar never hurt anyone. But the problem is, back in the days of like royalty, you were like very privileged if you got sugar once a month, once every 6 months, once a year, right? Nowadays, people are eating. I watch a person at work drink 3 Monster Energies a day when you got 6 cups of sugar in one single Monster Energy. Right. I mean, we're killing ourselves. We are killing ourselves with this stuff. And so most of these people will end up to be diabetic if they don't change their ways, because that strips away your chromium and vanadium stores, and eventually you're going to be diabetic. It's just, there's no getting around it unless you're supplementing correctly and eating correctly, which most of them aren't.
Right.
You know, it amazes me how many nurses at work go to the McDonald's across the street. I'm just horrified by that. I can't.
So speaking of, that you had brought this up in the very beginning about, people needing to want to change. This is hard work. This isn't a quick fix. This isn't like, hey, take this pill, you're going to be good tomorrow, and you never have to do another thing other than pop this pill. There's actual work involved. There's some investigation involved. It's a trial and error. There's some real holding a mirror up to yourself, that needs to be done, some personal self-reflection and examination. All of these things are not, when I said before about self-love, like that's real self-love, is really taking the time to examine who you are. What are your, strengths, weaknesses? What are you doing that is not serving you? Are you willing to let go of some of those things? And we all have them, and those are not fun things to look at, and they're even less fun to let go of. So what do you do or what's your advice for people who are struggling to get to that place? Because a lot of, ignorance is bliss, and, sometimes it is easier to just, go into the sugar high or whatever the vice may be for you. But that's part of why we're in this, dilemma. Honestly, right?
That's a toughie. I mean, it's each individual person's different.
Of course.
I would say come spend time in a nursing home, if you're able to in your state. Some are still, dealing with COVID and all that stuff. But you look at these people. I mean, Courtney, do you understand? I have people who are in their 30s and 40s in a wheelchair with COPD, diabetes, and all these things because they won't change their habits. These are people that are dying at a very young age, I'm going to be going on 50 soon, and I can run circles around some 30 or 40-year-olds.
Yeah. You look amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of collagen and red meat. That's how you stay young right there. But it's I don't know. I really don't have a good answer for that.
Not that 50's old, by the way, but you look a lot younger than that. So
thank you.
Yeah.
So I really can't answer that question. I guess the best thing I could say to do is reach out to yourself spiritually. Okay, I think that's the linchpin to everything. Yeah. Watch people like Dr. Wayne Dyer, Gabby, what's her name? Gabby, I forget. I just love her to death. Hicks, what's her name? Esther Hicks. Mm-hmm. She's another great one to listen to. Yeah. Listen to the spiritual people who will tell you about making choices and how the choice has always been yours and how you can create and how you're here for reasons and things like that. I would say the biggest thing that I would look into when you're talking about self-love is just to learn how to self-love. And these gurus and things like that can teach you that. Dr. Wayne Dyer is one of my favorite persons that ever walked the earth. I don't know if you know who he is or ever listened to him.
I'm not, honestly, I don't listen to a lot of him, but I'm very familiar with who he is. Yeah.
That man changed my life. Honestly, wow. I could probably credit him with finding myself. I was a very low self-esteem when I was younger. And things like that, because I did suffer some abuses and things like that when I was younger, and it wasn't my parents or anything like that, but so don't worry about that. I had a lot of reasons to hate myself when I was younger. But I think a big part of my upbringing and the reason why I am who I am today is because I was always a rebel. I got terrible grades in school when I was younger because I think it was because I'm not trying to sound arrogant by saying this, but I was so intelligent that school was boring to me. And I couldn't stand it. You know what I mean? So, but I had a
lot of people who experienced that. Absolutely. If you're not stimulated, then yeah.
Yeah, and so my mother took me to psychologists. They gave me intelligence exams, and they were like, "Look, he's above average in intelligence, so I don't see anything wrong with him." So they just thought, well, he's just an asshole, he doesn't want to pay attention, right? Because that's really the kind of the conclusion that they came up with is he's just defiant.
I
He
mean,
doesn't.
that's the first thing I thought when I first met you too. I was like, wow, that guy's a real a-hole. Yeah. That's a problem in life. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can see why he's struggling. He's just an a-hole. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a lot of that when I was younger. They thought I was just a bad kid. But then again, and I'm a two-time college dropout, right? Because
2 times.
yeah, because I was
Wow,
actually
that's an accomplishment there.
so my mother forced me to go to college right after high school, and I didn't want to go to college. I just got out of high school and it sucked, right? So and I barely even graduated, to be honest with you. So I went to college. I did okay at first, and then I just lost interest. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. This is boring to me. You're just making me to go to college. So I dropped out.
Okay.
Then I kind of struggled in life for a little while. And so I decided I'll go back again and do something, got bored again and went, eh. But then once my life was on the line, and my doctor told me, if you don't do something, and then I had that epiphany and all that stuff, I went at college and I graduated 7/10 of a point from a summa cum laude. I was a magna cum laude. I graduated with honors.
Wow, what a
Because,
turnaround.
well, it was something that I was interested in. I loved science. I mean, all these people struggled in organic biochemistry. I had a party with it.
It's so fun.
I loved it.
I did it in high school, like for summer school, and really loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was me. Once I got into the sciences and got past all the basic stuff, that was easy. I mean, I literally, I'm like a math genius. Like, right? When I was in high school, I didn't have enough credits to graduate, and so I was failing math class because I slept through most of it, and didn't really do much. So I went to the teacher and I told him, I need your credit to graduate or I'm going to be held back this year. And he was like, if you have any hope of even remotely have any hope of graduating, you need to ace the final exam. And I did every question.
Awesome.
Right. So I came up to him and said, well, I aced the exam. I get my credit, right? And he said, well, I don't know, man. I still don't know if you have enough. And I literally like broke down. I was like, you told me, that if I aced the exam, you would pass me. So he gave me a D-, and that's how I graduated high school. Right.
Wow. Well, you worked on your negotiation skills as well.
I did. It worked. He was a funny teacher though. Like one time I asked him, like I forgot my lunch money and I was starving, and I asked him, I said, hey, can you make me alone? He was like, okay, poof, goodbye. He made me alone. So he was kind of a comic like that. Yeah, he was cool. He ended up passing me, but man, when I was in college, I literally was like blowing through the math classes, and I had people 60 years old in the class with me go, hey man, how do you do this stuff? They had like no idea. To me, math just came naturally.
Right.
So when it came, that's where people struggle the most in like organic biochemistry in those classes, is they struggle with the math portion of it.
Sure.
So that's why it was so easy for me.
Yeah.
So that was what
I think
really
people
loved.
struggle a lot with, and I guess it's related to math. They struggle a lot with the logic component of it, which is a similar part of the brain, but it's kind of the logical deduction, which is a lot of what organic chemistry is it's like a puzzle and piecing it all together. Yeah.
Yeah, but biology is really my thing. Like I said, I want to know how every
you're
cycle in the body
really
works.
Passionate about it. Yeah.
So when there's something going wrong in your body, I literally can go, oh, well, this is what you need. Let's incorporate that in. And that's kind of what I do with my clients, So when I talk to somebody, I like to get a good feel for what's wrong with them, and what disorders they had, what symptoms they have. And then to me, it's like putting together a puzzle, right? I'll take all your information after we talk and I'll go, okay, let me get back to you. And then I'll get back to them, and then I'll look at all their symptoms and I just put it together like a mystery. And I go, this is what's going on. They're deficient in this, this, and this. So then I'll put you on a program. Okay. I say, okay, this is the reason why you're deficient in that, because you're eating this, this, and this, when you should be eating this, this, and this. And then I will set them up with a diet plan. We'll talk psychology and stuff, and we'll get everything in order for the person.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead. No, I'm good.
I'm curious a little bit about, because I think we're seeing this in lots of realms. So I'm going to have a follow-up question to this, but before I get to that, I'm going to ask you, how do you deal with, I think we discussed a little bit about the programming and conditioning that people are experiencing currently, and this is not new, but like the example you brought up was the quote unquote science experiment that they use to prove that fats are bad and they kill you and they cause heart disease, and welcome to the Snackwell world,
Yeah.
which, obviously we know that that's not the healthiest thing for you, but people really are programmed. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I talk to that have such deep entrenched notions of what's healthy and what's not healthy. Like veganism is a great example. Like, can't eat meat, that's terrible for you, that's going to kill you. And they're so militant, and they've got such strong cognitive dissonance that they won't listen to anything else. So I'm wondering because I think we're seeing this not just in nutrition, but nutrition is a really great example. But we're seeing this in lots of different areas of life, certainly, in this country. But I think, all over the world, really. And but when you're working with someone one-on-one, I would imagine this is something you come up against a lot. And how do you deal with that?
Um, I have a way of, I don't know how to say this correctly, but I have a way of convincing people of things. And it's not because I explain. And I think that's the biggest problem, is we have an anger issue in this country, and it's only getting worse, especially with the way the last election went, and Orange Man bad and all these different things, like everybody's super angry right now. So I think I have a way of talking to people where I kind of put them at ease, because I throw information at them and I explain why. And I've had so many people who have been militant about things, but when they're done talking to me, they kind of go, huh, because I'll tell you why. And I think that's what we're missing, is everybody just wants to drive their point home, and you're going to listen to me and I know what I'm talking about. But if you say, hey, this is the reason why that may not be right, you don't tell them they're wrong. That's the worst thing you can tell somebody, is you're wrong about that.
Of course.
You just tell them, well, here's a different side of that. Let me say this. The reason why I think that wouldn't work is because of this. And I show the evidence, I present it to them. And a lot of times, if you just talk to somebody like they're human, because that's the biggest thing, is we're dehumanizing each other all the time with our rants and our yelling at each other on Facebook and arguing and all this stuff. When you can reach somebody on a human level and you treat them like they're your brother or your sister when you talk to them, I think it's much easier to convince somebody. But see, Big Pharma has a serious advantage over us, and it's really hard to overcome that advantage. And what that advantage that they have is proper nutrition, and healing your body takes time. I had a girl that I counseled at my old facility when I was in Youngstown. It's a sweet girl, but she had this thyroid problem. She was on Synthroid, a huge dose of Synthroid, and it kept raising and raising. And what she wouldn't understand is a lot of it had to do with the food she ate. She thought she was eating healthy. So I explained to her why these things aren't healthy, like how they've taken the iodine out and they put bromide in there in the breads and all that stuff, and I love Dr. Berg. I watch him a lot. And Dr. Berg says stuff like, I don't know why they did that. He knows why, because they don't want us to be healthy, right? So they took the good iodine out and put in the bad bromide instead. So
tell people why bromine is bad. Sorry.
Okay, so halogens are very attracted by your thyroid. It loves halogens. Okay, so like this whole deception with fluoride. Okay, your body, now I want to be very clear on this. Okay, your body needs calcium fluoride. If you don't have it, you'll die. Okay, it's very important that you have it. However, it's in everything you eat. So you're never going to go deficient in it. Okay, this crap that they're dumping into the water systems and putting in your toothpaste is a supercharged carcinogen. Okay, that is a toxic waste. Is toxic waste from the aluminum and fertilizer industries. Okay, and they used a scheme with I always forget the guy's name, but it's Sigmund Freud's nephew. He wrote the book Propaganda. He's
I don't know this.
He's the guy that when in New York City back in, I think it was like the 20s, when they marched the Statue of Liberty down Manhattan and they had the cigarette in their hand and they pushed cigarettes saying they were good for you and all this stuff. He was the guy. And it's Sigmund Freud's nephew. And for some reason, I always forget this guy's name. He was the guy responsible that now he wrote the book Propaganda, which is the #1 handbook for every politician in the United States. Okay. And he was the king of propaganda, and he got together with
Crispin Miller. Crispin Miller. No,
not him. No.
Okay. Right, continue. I'll find it.
Look up the book Propaganda, and that's probably how you find him. Yeah. But then just look up Sigmund Freud's nephew, Propaganda, and then it'll probably come up from there.
Edward Bernays?
Edward Bernays. Okay. That's it. Yeah, Edward Bernays. He got together with a doctor from the American Dental Association on a fake study that said that fluoride helps your teeth and bones, and they started putting it in toothpaste back in I think it was the 40s or 50s maybe, and we've never removed it since. Then we thought, now if you look at any study, and this is what's crazy, okay, if you look at any study that tells you about water fluoridation in a community, when they start fluoridating the water, the incidence of bad teeth and bones slightly goes down, and then it goes right back to normal. And I think that's because of the seeding of the consciousness of the people. Hey, we're going to start fluoridating your water. You won't have as many teeth and bone problems. So they create that, and then eventually it just goes right back to where it was, and it doesn't help at all. Now, Harvard in 2008, I want to say, I was in college at the time. I believe it was 2008. They came out with an article in the Harvard School of Medicine Journal that said that we got to stop fluoridating the water because it's dropping children's intelligence by 10 to 15 points. Okay. And it got vastly ignored.
Wait, 10 to 15 IQ points?
10 to 15 IQ points.
That's huge.
Yes. And they completely ignored it, because they have nowhere to put this fluoride that's left over from these industries. Now, the stuff they're putting in the water is sodium fluoride, sodium hexafluorosilicate. I mean, these are like supercharged carcinogenic toxins that they're putting in our water and telling us that it's helping our teeth and bones because they got nowhere else to put it. Plus, that's just more money for the big pharma, when we get sick and have thyroid issues. Now, getting back to the thyroid, you ask why.
Yes, and the halogens, yep.
Right. Bromine. So halogens are very attracted to your thyroid. I don't know why, but it's like a magnet for that.
It probably has to do with the ionic properties, I'm guessing. Because
it's exactly what it has to do with. So there, it loves halogens, and most of the halogens are pretty molecularly close to each other. Some are good halogens, some are bad halogens. Okay, some can do free radical damage to your body. Bromine and fluoride are two of the halogens that are very bad for you. And then, of course, neon, I think, is the other one. And that we don't deal with that in our body anyway. That's for lights and stuff.
But that affects us. I mean, we know it from epileptics. They can't have halogen lights. They go into seizures.
Yeah. So basically the good ones are iodine. Iodine is needed by your body. Now that all depends on what form of iodine. Like topical iodine can be toxic as well. You don't want to swallow that, it'll kill you, right? But if you get like the bioavailable forms, I personally take nascent iodine, as much as I don't like the
niacin or is it different?
No. Nascent iodine. It's the singular form of iodine that's suspended in a glycerin base, basically, and it's very extremely bioavailable. You take like 100% of it, and it changed my life. Like I had bad from drinking tap water before I knew all this. When I first started going to college, I had bad brain fog, really bad. I would read something and I couldn't even remember what I just read. I'd have to read it like 3 times to remember it. And then our certain conspiracy theory talk radio host that we talked about before we went on air started educating about iodine, and he started selling Survival Shield X2, and that's from like deep earth crystals. It's like this stuff is so toxic when they pull it out. It's from like 40,000 feet under the earth. It's so toxic it'll melt through concrete, right? So they take it and then they convert it and they suspend it in a glycerin base, and then it becomes non-toxic and bioavailable. It's the best form you can get, right?
Interesting. Okay.
Right. So of course, because you're such a halogen magnet, if you're not getting enough iodine and you're getting too much things like bromine and fluoride and things like that, what happens? You start getting T4 dysfunction in your thyroid, and then some people actually get goiters and stuff like that, right? So iodine is very important, and we're not getting it anymore. It's not in the soil anymore. It's not being replenished. So iodine deficiency is a huge problem. So I tell people, if you want to buy, the nascent forms, Dr. Group at the Global Healing Center in Texas makes a really good nascent iodine. I think you can get that on his website and at Amazon possibly, which I don't really condone people shopping there. But I know people, it's convenient for a lot of people. So, or you can take sea kelp tablets. That's a really good form of biodegradable or
Bioavailable.
Yeah, that you can get, and that's relatively cheap. You take, like six of those a day, probably a big huge bottle of it for like what, $10, and
Oh,
you're
wow.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super cheap. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it, and why we're having so many thyroid problems. But the point I'm making here is people develop these chronic issues and these problems over spans of decades sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's never going to be a solution where the problem's going to fix itself overnight. But that's where big pharma has their advantage on us, because you can make a recommendation to a person, they'll do it 3 or 4 months and not see any results, and then they go right back to their old bad habits and right back to big pharma, right? You have to convince people that if you stick with it, you're going to see results. And the perfect example was the girl I was talking about that I worked with. She had these thyroid issues that were just so bad. She had goiter and all this different stuff. So I gave her a bottle of the X2. I just said, here, take it. Start taking this every day. I said, I want you to stay on your Synthroid for now. Spend 30 days taking 1 drop of this every other day, because if you go too quickly,
Right.
then you'll get a reactive problem where it pushes too much of the toxins out that are stuck in there, right. And then you'll get flu-like symptoms, and it can lead to other problems.
Well, and it's all about homeostasis, right? So if you go too far in one direction, the body's going to rebound. Yeah.
Amen. Yeah. So she took it for about 6 months, and I had her after about a month start coming off your Synthroid. I want you to take a half dose of your Synthroid, and then we'll review later and see how you're doing after your next visit to see how your thyroid function is doing. And she went, I think a month later or something like that. The doctors didn't see any kind of improvement yet, and I said, you probably won't. Okay, it's only been about a month. So after about 6 months later, I had her completely off of her Synthroid, and she was just taking the iodine. All right. Wow. 6 months later, but listen, it gets better. 6 months later, she goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, oh man, your thyroid's all out of whack. She was like, I'm going to up your Synthroid. And she said to her, oh, no. Full confession, I haven't been taking it. Right. And so the doctor goes, take it. You start taking it. So the next day she comes back to work and she's in tears. It's been 6 months. It's not working. The iodine's not working. The doctor and I said, look, calm down. Let it be. Okay. Yeah. Give it 6 more months. Okay. Just hang with me here. Stay off the Synthroid. Okay. Just keep taking the iodine, but now I want you to take 3 drops every other day. Okay. So I bumped her drops up. 6 months later, she went back again, and the doctor looked at her and said, oh, you're back on your medication. Your thyroid's perfect. Right? She looked at the doctor and said, I haven't taken it. My
awesome.
dietitian fixed it for me. That's what she told her. And the doctor went, How? The doctor had no idea about iodine, right? So she educated her.
How did the
And
doctor
that
not know about iodine?
they're not taught that. They're not taught that. Look, doctors are
That's
taught how to diagnose, how to prescribe medications, and how to run machines to diagnose. That's it, right?
I,
So she hung with me for a year, and she struggled. She had a lot of
yeah,
struggle.
it's a process, totally.
But then before that year was up and she went to the doctor, she started noticing that the weight was finally starting to fall off of her because she was a pretty big girl. But the weight was coming off much easier. And
Sure.
she's
Thyroid regulates your metabolism. Yeah.
absolutely. So the signs were there, and I knew because I saw her, she was like 20 pounds less. So I knew when she was going to go to the doctor that she was going to be successful, and I knew it, and it worked.
Ah, that's
And
amazing.
I've never had a bigger hug in my life.
I bet. I
Yeah,
bet.
she was so happy, and the whole time I only charged her $60 and a free bottle of iodine. You know, that was it. Because she was a coworker, she was a friend, and I helped her
Yeah,
out. And
sure.
plus, I was still honing my skills at the time too.
Yeah. And what a case study you have there. So,
Right, a
yeah.
big one. So the biggest point that I can make to anybody is hang with me. Let's give it time,
Yeah.
and just listen to what I'm telling you because I know what I'm doing. I really know. I've decoded everything, every health problem I ever had. I used to have high blood pressure. I had chronic kidney disease, stage 2. I had fatty liver. I've had all kinds of different problems. I've had leaky gut. And right now, you put me up against any 18-year-old and I'll run a freaking circle around you right now.
Awesome.
I mean, look, best
Yeah.
shape,
It was awesome.
best shape of my life.
Amazing.
So it's been a long road for me, and I'll tell you, it took me several years to reverse the damage I did to myself. I mean, I was literally on the road before I became a mechanic. Before I had children, I worked for a nationwide networking company, and I used to go around and do fiber optics. I would build Lowe's stores and stuff like that, Staples
Yeah.
stores, and I was eating like fast food every single day, and it just ravaged me,
Yeah.
And so it was a very long road. It took me years to get where I needed to be, but this is my mission. This is my revolution right now. Okay, because in the future, I am going to be the doctor of the future. Okay, because I can't see how big pharma and their lies and their schemes and their evilness that they're putting on us, I just don't see how that can go much longer because I truly believe right now we are in the midst of the Great Awakening and people are waking up and realizing what is going on. And we have been lied to from the day we were born to the day we die, right? Everything's a lie, all of it. So, and I think this whole last election kind of proved that, did it not?
For sure. I think that we might need to do another one on that because there would be a lot we can go into on that. But I do think it's all I think it's all tied. I really do think it's tied. I think this I don't think everything has been a lie, but I think we have been fed quite a lot of lies, and it's been very hard. People lack discernment because one, they don't have any spirituality anymore. Not everybody, but a lot of people have been stripped of spirituality, and spirituality teaches you discernment. And because you've been fed so many lies that it's hard to know what is true. And people are, they a lot of times don't want to hear the truth because they've been their world has been so flipped upside down. It's so hard for them to discern. So I think that it is really all linked. And I think that we are in a time of an awakening. At least that's what I really hope. And I think you're definitely part of it. I think that, we need more people like you who are willing to speak the truth. You would think that telling people about iodine shouldn't be such a crime, but in today's world, it really is, because you're up against big giants who don't want you to talk about things that are simple, like thiamine and iodine and things that people can do to take personal responsibility. I think if I really think about what we're the battle is. I do think we're in a battle of good versus evil, but it's almost like we're in a battle of tyrannical forces versus personal responsibility. People don't they want you to have personal efficacy and personal responsibility and accountability, and all the things that make us human. Essentially, that's what free will is about. It's the will to make good choices, bad choices, learn from those choices, and then hopefully make better ones in the future.
Yeah, and the way I kind of feel about it is I kind of live by this, and it was an old saying by the guy who wrote 1984. For some reason, his name
George
is
Orwell.
yeah. He said, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act, and that's why my company is called Diet Science Revolution, because I am a revolutionary at heart, and I found out that I'm probably related to Jonathan Dayton, who was the Secretary of State for Aaron Burr. And he was a senator, and he was actually jailed for revolution when that whole Aaron Burr incident happened. I definitely have revolutionary pumping through my veins.
Awesome. Well, we will definitely do another one, because I do want to do a deep dive on the whole 2020 debacle. But in the meantime, until then, tell everybody whatever closing remarks you want to make, and where people can find you and begin their revolution and take back their health.
Okay, so my website is www.dietsciencerevolution.com. I have some videos on YouTube, although they're pretty dated now. Right now, I'm in the process of a reformat. Reformatting my website. I'm going to start putting out newer videos, updated videos, because a lot of that information that I put out before was kind of old. But if you're suffering right now from a chronic disease, if you go to my website and you click on the little bar at the top, I have a list of all the different chronic diseases, and you can go and look at what I recommend and how to fix those chronic issues. But otherwise, hang with me, people, because I'm telling you right now, you get with me, I'll get you straightened out. We'll get you off your medications, of course, with the help and consent of your doctor. We're not going to do any of this sneaky stuff anymore, okay? Because we don't want to get ourselves in trouble. But I just want people to understand that it's going to be a long process. It's going to be not an easy process, but make sure you're ready, because we'll get you whipped into shape.
Awesome. I love it.
Other than that, I really appreciate you having me on. I mean, this has been so much fun.
Yeah, likewise. This was awesome. I look forward to the next one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anytime. You just let me know. Anytime.
I will. Thank you.
You're very welcome. But yeah, they go to my website. Even if you just had questions for me, at the bottom of my website, there's a contact me paragraph. You just put in your email and drop whatever message you want from me. I'll get back to you. If you want to start a program, we'll get you on a program. I usually charge around $500 for a 6-month program. What you'll get in that 6 months is 8 weeks of sessions with me. We'll make you a diet plan. We'll get you assessed. We'll figure out everything that's going on with you. We'll make a plan to wean you off your medications. And after that 8-week session's over, your 9th session will be 6 months. We'll do an update. We'll get together. We'll look at your progress and see how you're doing, and then we'll just kind of go from there. And I still, to this day, even though it's been a couple years, I still to this day talk to some of my clients. And
that's amazing.
They're good friends of mine. Yeah, they've all my clients have become my friends.
Yeah,
and they're all every one of them that's ever worked with me is happy and healthy. And before we log off, I just got a quick one for you. I have a friend, Debbie, wonderful, wonderful woman. She kept having these issues, and it was calcium issues. Her body was just loaded with calcium. And I told her, I said, there's something going on with your parathyroid gland.
Yeah.
Because that's when somebody has when somebody has high calcium, a doctor's reaction is to, let's lower your calcium, to avoid these calcium foods, when that's actually wrong. What's going on is your body's deficient in calcium, so your parathyroid gland is sending out PSH, parathyroid stimulating hormone, and telling your body, let's start pulling calcium from the lowest fruit on the tree, which is your bones and teeth, right? So it floods your system.
You're
with all
actually
this calcium.
leaching calcium is what you're really doing.
Right. So I said, it's got to be your parathyroid. It has to be. There's something going on there that's causing this chronic issue, because these doctors, no matter what they did, could not figure it out. It was like chronic, and it would get so sky high that she would have to go to the hospital. So she talked to her doctor about it, and the doctor looked at her parathyroid, and she had 3 tumors in her parathyroid, which were removed, and she is now healthy and happy. So she has become a very good friend of mine, and she credits me for saving her life, though.
You did.
Well, I mean,
it was a joint effort, but you were the conduit. You were definitely the catalyst.
It was definitely a joint effort. She was very vigilant about figuring out what's going on with her. That's why I credit her with most of it, but I'll take a little credit.
Yeah, well, you're a guide. That's really what you're doing. You're guiding people to heal themselves, which is a beautiful thing. You're empowering people to take back, their power to heal themselves, and
that's what it's all about.
In their hands. Yeah, I love it.
Health is a choice, and that's what it is. I mean, you either choose to be healthy, or you choose to live chronically sick the rest of your life, and that's a choice that I'm going to help you make. If you trust in me, I'll help you make that choice, and we'll do it together.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much.
All right, Courtney, thank you. It was such a pleasure to be on here.
Such a pleasure. I loved it.
All right, you take care now.